At Skillfully, we often meet young people who aspire to careers in financial services, but they aren't sure what it takes to thrive in the field. What does a firm expect of its people? And how should you handle yourself at work? And really, if you don't have family or friends or mentors who already know financial services in some way, then the prospect of working in this area can be pretty daunting. So to help dispel the mystery today, we are with Paballo Coetzee-Motlhasedi, who is a human resources professional at Coronation Fund Managers. And from this HR perspective and her role at a leading asset manager, Paballo is in a strong position to provide insights about what it takes to thrive. Paballo, welcome. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Greg. Thank you for having me.
Such a pleasure. Thanks for chatting to us. And I want to kick off with this question. It's about you, and it's this: when you entered a financial services firm, did you already have a strong understanding of what working in this sector would be like?
My understanding was very theoretical, hey, and of course I knew it would be corporate, but looking back, I only developed a better understanding of the dynamic and fast-paced nature of the asset management industry with my experience.
When you say with theoretical, if you think back, are there aspects from your theoretical training that you were led to expect or didn't know about, and then you got a surprise?
The depth of this industry, the technical depth of this industry was very surprising for me. I think growing up, in a small town, the experience generally about finance is not that great. It's very basic. Luckily, my mom was a teacher, so education was always, front and center. And then when I went to university, at first I pursued science stream qualification. And when that didn't work out, I then pursued a more commercial qualification. And then within that commercial qualification, doing financial management, doing accounting, I feel like that theoretical knowledge was then a lot more practical. And so I find that that's the kind of education and learnings that really just gave me that basic understanding of what this type of industry, would be about. But, you think about financial services in the context of banking also. And so the technical depth of asset management in general is something that I definitely was not prepared for and didn't really get a good grasp of until I had to recruit for this industry.
And when you speak of technical depth, are you thinking of the sheer amount of knowledge a person needs to have in their everyday work in the industry, or are you alternatively or also speaking of how quickly a person needs to keep up with the changing requirements of knowledge and skills?
Both those things. I think in my role, one wouldn't think that you have to concern yourself about, the business side of an asset management firm. And the business side of an asset management firm is exactly what it is that we do for people. And what we do for people here, is very technical. And so I found myself having to actually understand, like, what is asset management? What different asset classes are there? And then think about the different departments within our environment. What do they do then that relates to the service we offer to clients? And all of it is quite technical, even if you are sort of finding talent for information systems, for example, the systems that are used in this environment are also very technical. And so, yeah, all of it, it really needs you to dig deep and understand on the job really what's going on, but also from a business perspective, what this industry has to offer.
It's interesting you say this, because sometimes people entering a field will say, I got all this technical knowledge at university, and I was surprised because most of it was really irrelevant to my work, and that was the big learning for me. There was bits of it that were important, but there were all kinds of other things I needed to know. And if I'm understanding you, you're saying, no, actually, you realize that the technical knowledge you've acquired and more is really meaningful at work. It's not some airy abstract matter. It has to be integrated into the business in a meaningful way, and you have to think about it in terms of everybody's role. Kind of brings life to the theory that you've acquired.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that.
So if we kind of think about the working day, are there aspects of your working day, maybe that you haven't mentioned yet, that could surprise or intrigue people who just aren't familiar with asset management firms?
I think what might surprise people is how deeply client-centric and people-centric our environment is. In my role, a lot of consideration is made, about hiring, retaining, and rewarding the best people. In whatever role you are in, you have to always be mindful that we are because of our clients. We exist because of our clients. And this is echoed quite a lot in the business. In my immediate role, there is so much variety. I think that would be very surprising to a lot of people because our team is also very small. We're a team of 5, supporting a headcount of, 300 and between 330, 350 employees. And so, yeah, I think the variety of what we do on a day-to-day, I think would definitely take a lot of people by surprise, especially because I think there is a certain sort of like narrative or a certain impression that people have generally about the HR, and in our case, the talent management space.
Am I right to think that one of the things your answer adds here is earlier you said, well, you really need technical depth if you work in financial services. But here you're saying, don't imagine that you'll be sitting in a study just doing financial mathematics, say, or working on metrics on a spreadsheet if you're in a talent management or HR role. Things are also very people centric. You're engaging with clients very deeply and you're thinking about your colleagues. And you should also be prepared to pitch in beyond whatever the narrow mandate of your role might be.
Absolutely. All of that. You definitely, I think it's not just about the technical, it's about the people as well, because you are in a business of people. And so naturally, the two have to gel.
It sounds, and part of the way you're speaking about it intrigues me because it sounds like a pretty uncompromising environment. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm just saying it in the sense that this is an environment that's demanding. You must get the technicals right. You must be client centered. You must engage properly with your colleagues. You must be willing to pitch in. These are all just expected.
I think it just also speaks to just generally, the type of people that are in our environment. I think we're uncompromising about integrity, but a lot of people are also very, driven, and we are in a performance-driven environment as well. So yes, absolutely.
Well, let me pick up on this point about the people you work with. You work with a lot of young hires at Coronation who might be unfamiliar with life in financial services when they come in. So what do you find are some of the biggest challenges they face?
We hire really great, talented, and smart people. And for young, inexperienced, talented young hires, I think working with experienced professionals, that are very talented, very smart, can be intimidating. Because generally, these young hires themselves are also high achieving, and they come with their own high expectations of themselves. They want to make an impact, want to make a mark, and they want to do a great job. So I find that having to be patient, with one's journey, your own learning journey, your mistakes, your expectations, can be a tough balance. So almost the fight within yourself, in an environment like ours, where you find equally smart people that, have been here doing this for a longer time than you. I think that can be quite challenging.
So there's this long learning curve. And if I'm understanding you, the idea is accept that it is a learning curve. You won't be perfect from the beginning, even if you're very demanding on yourself and you're very talented, which is why you've been hired. You're going to make mistakes and there are things you won't know, and value the mentorship. There's a journey ahead. Keep at it.
Absolutely. Yep. And in fact, the common advice that I usually give whenever we are in interviews and somebody asks, what does it take, to be successful in this role as a graduate or as a young hire? Your job is to learn. And that would require patience in yourself because, there's so many things, there's so many other factors at play here that might make you feel like, it's not happening quick enough. And so it really is just that balance and being able to be kind with yourself, throughout that learning journey in the early stages of your career.
Wow. Your job is to learn. I like that. And it involves a kind of acceptance because the learner is somebody who doesn't know things and gets things wrong. That's the condition of being a learner. And from the way you speak, it sounds like even the senior people are learning too.
Absolutely. We all learn.
So if somebody were to say, are there particular items of knowledge or skills or habits that would be really helpful for me to pick up as soon as possible? Does anything come to mind?
I think for me, what comes to mind around that is, I think having a strong sense of self is often underestimated. When you have a strong sense of self, who you are, what you stand for, it shows in your confidence, it shows in how you communicate, it shows in how you form meaningful connections, it translates into your passion, into your work. That's the one that usually comes to mind for me. Others would be, skills like critical thinking, staying curious, inquisitive, analytical ability, creativity, being a problem solver. These are all great skills to learn early, and these are great skills that would really set you apart in this industry.
It's very interesting. And, when I hear problem solver, analytical ability, I think these are the sorts of things that people might think, yes, of course. But creativity is interesting too. And perhaps it's not the first thing that would come to mind for someone. And if you have any kind of further thoughts about how creativity is important, why it's important to cultivate it in what sense, that would be great. And also this idea of the strong sense of self. Of course, it's not the kind of strong sense of self which amounts to a sort of arrogance, somebody coming in and saying, look, I can do this. I know this. This is a piece of cake. Because you've already said that would be a really bad idea. What is the strong sense of self? Is it something to do with tenacity, knowing what your goals are?
It starts with, again, understanding your background. It starts with understanding your own background and heritage in this beautiful country. Who are you? Who is your community? Who are the people that came before you? What did they do? How do things work in your family? What are your practices? Your principles, your values. And then, those things are usually sort of like the basis that I guess that you carry through life. But then as you travel through your educational journey, being mindful and being purposeful around, you're selecting a career, what does that look like? And when you think about how your career and your personality sort of like match or mix, what does that look like? So what are sort of key strengths you already have that mean that career that you are choosing, that career you're interested in, really, they'll overlap quite beautifully, and you'll feel like, you're in your groove. You won't feel like you're sort of swimming against the tide. So it's understanding yourself in that sense too, and it's also understanding then what is important to you as you go through, when you're studying, secondary schooling, higher education, sometimes the focus is just to get it done, right? And so there's not a lot of time or even maturity, I guess, and wisdom to think about, I need to be happy actually, because whatever I do after this, I mean, this is going to be my life. But I think time never runs out to then still sort of go on that journey while you're working, in whatever company you're working at, in whatever industry you belong to. You think about, what does this mean? Am I enjoying what I do? Do I find value in what I do? Do I find meaning in what I do? The big why. Why do I do this? And how does what I do contribute towards, my why in life, my purpose, And so I think it's quite spiritual for me, and quite personal, sense of self, that I'm referring to here.
I mean, that's fascinating. And what I'm understanding is that you just can't go through the motions, no matter how extensively you were to do so. It's not enough. You bring your full personhood here, and that this sense of who you are and what you stand for, your strengths and weaknesses and desires, your goals, is crucial in all kinds of ways at work, I suppose, from when things get tough and you're tired and you're wondering what you're doing there, to maybe if you have ethical choices to make, to when you're in a juncture in your career and you need to decide which way to go. You need to remind yourself who you are, where you come from, and where you're hoping to land up. Fascinating.
And just being happy, I think it's quite cheesy, but fulfillment is also important, and I guess that also comes with time.
Yes, that's great. And what about kind of the creative side that I kind of would also like to pick up? How does it sort of reveal itself at work in financial services?
I think creativity, I mean, I'm naturally creative, and I think I can speak to this in the context of me. I feel like in my role, for example, there's always opportunities to either do things better or come up with new ideas. And so that's where your creativity will sort of have to play, a part. In a lot of different companies, creativity is valuable because, you have to innovate. Companies, have to sort of have that thing that makes a client choose this A player versus this B player, and I think creativity makes you different. Creativity gives you that advantage, that competitive advantage. And so when you have different people with different types of creativity, then you've got really a nice opportunity to steer whatever decisions you have in different directions. And so, I think, it's the simple things of the day to day, but it's also, I guess, in the bigger sense of things around, what other people do in their roles that is important from a creative point of view. I think if you're in a sort of like a creative space, in a creative profession, then of course you're expected to be creative. But I also think that when you're in a space, for example, like in the talent management space where I am, you have to think about, if you're reaching candidates, what does that candidate experience look like? And if you have to be creative about how you are attracting talent, that is something that needs to just come sort of like within you. And how well you do it, then sort of like, then depends on your creative flair. And I think having that type of skill set is also quite, it's a bonus in a lot of different roles within the financial services industry. And that's what I'm referring to when I refer to sort of being creative.
Yes, and I suppose this is another way in which it's not enough just to go through the motions.
Yeah.
You could do the same thing as everybody else or as other firms, and you could strive for 5% more efficiency, but it's much more of a game changer if you think up a new and better way of doing something.
There's also out the box thinking. Yeah, it really is. And it's this entrepreneurial spirit that comes along with it. I guess that creativity for me and being entrepreneurial sort of like almost go hand in hand, because it's it's just about seeing opportunities where you can apply things differently, where you can have ideas, so ideate, conceptualize things and propose different solutions to different problems. Yeah, that's the fun part for me when I speak about creativity.
I think some people would be surprised and interested to hear about the entrepreneurial spirit, because maybe people think there's a division. You can march into a large major player like Coronation, or you can get a job in some nimble kind of startup in working broadly in financial services, and the one is corporate and the other is entrepreneurial. But that's not what you're saying.
What I'm saying here is, and I think this one will be personal, because we all have different experiences and we've all worked in different environments. And so, for example, like someone like me who's always worked in smaller environments where teams are leaner, my experience would be very different to somebody who's worked in a larger international organization with thousands of people, And so the experiences that I've had in the environments that I've worked in is that you kind of run with your work in a way that you spot opportunities and you make something of them. You don't wait to be told, that you need to upskill in this way, or that, this could be a fun project for you, or any of that stuff. It's really just about that coming from you, that you see that you want, that there's an opportunity for you to add more value in this way, and you go for it. And I think what I've found has been quite meaningful and quite fulfilling for me in an environment like Coronation has been that people will be surprised to know this, that the environments, our teams are quite small. And so your role becomes really broad. So sometimes if you have somebody who sees an opportunity, you see, okay, this has not been done before. What do we think about this? Then you end up being the person who then has to sort of pick it up. Okay, cool. So now this is your project because you've seen an opportunity and you're interested. And so run with it, propose what you want to propose. And obviously, if it works for the business, then it works for the business, then great. So you will also get to see that value you've created in the real sense. Yeah, that's the creative flair. I feel like maybe startup environments are a bit more, I guess, intense, and maybe they're a lot less corporate-y. It's a lot more, I would imagine, sort of like boiler roomy, high pressured, with even less people, So, but surprising enough, at Coronation, we're not a big environment as well. We're not a large corporate, even though, the company is quite big and quite well known. Our teams are quite nimble. So that entrepreneurial spirit is something you actually get to see quite a lot.
Thank you. I think you've identified lots of attitudes as well as kind of skills and knowledge that would be a very good thing to cultivate for success in this field. And I want to end up by checking with you whether there are any other qualities that you would advise. By taking this angle, I'd like to ask you, where do you find that people who enjoy a long and successful career in financial services tend to have any particular qualities or attitudes?
What I've seen is that these people are generally ambitious. So there's a general ambition. They are really passionate about asset management, about finance, about the markets. It's their life. It's their day-to-day. They also find lifelong learning in education and development valuable. And another thing that I've also observed is that they're also really resilient. And yeah, the other thing that I've already mentioned before is, being entrepreneurial. And that ability of just being able to spot opportunities in your environment, and what those opportunities present to you in your career, and then just taking them. What I've also realized is that there are key players, and the concept of finance also, the concept of money, of finance, resonates deeply with them personally as well. And so, it's not just a marriage of convenience, if I can put it like that. It's really just being aligned, being in an environment, in an industry that you personally feel connected to. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Paballo. Thank you so much for your insights. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to have you on the Skillfully podcast.
It's a pleasure.
For anybody who doesn't know us yet, Skillfully offers world-class courses for high achievers, and you will find us at skillfully.co.za.